I stood in my study, staring at my phone screen as the notification flashed across it. A voice message from my daughter-in-law's mother, sent to me by accident. But I knew better. Nothing with that family was ever by accident. "Can you believe he still treats Marcus like a child?" Her voice dripped with contempt through the speaker. "We told Emily she married beneath her station. At least Marcus is finally standing up to the old man." I set the phone down carefully, my hand steadier than I expected. 27 years of fatherhood, and it had come to this. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, casting long shadows across the mahogany desk that had belonged to my father. He had been a carpenter, a simple man who built things with his hands and taught me that honest work was nothing to be ashamed of. If he could see me now, sitting in this paid-off house with a comfortable retirement and decades of successful engineering projects behind me, would he be proud? Or would he be disappointed in how I'd raised Marcus? I thought back to the early days when Marcus was just a boy. He had been curious, energetic, always asking questions about how things worked. I remembered teaching him to ride a bike in the park near our old house before his mother got sick. He had been 7 years old, determined not to give up even after falling a dozen times. "One more try, Dad," he'd said, his knees scraped and bleeding. "Just one more." That determination had carried him through his mother's illness, through the grief of losing her when he was 18, through college and into his 20s, but somewhere along the way, something had changed. The boy who wouldn't give up after falling had become a man who was afraid to try at all. My son Marcus was 32 years old. For the past 4 years since he married Emily, I had been covering their lives entirely. The 2-bedroom apartment in the nice part of town, my name on the lease, my money every month, the utilities, the insurance, the car payments, the grocery bills, even their weekend trips to wine country, all of it flowed from my accounts to theirs with the regularity of a heartbeat. I had told myself it was temporary. Marcus was finding himself, exploring career options, building his network. Emily was starting her business, a boutique marketing consultancy that had yet to land a single paying client in 3 years. They needed support, and I was his father. What else would I do? When Marcus first told me he was going to marry Emily, I had reservations. Not about her character. She seemed kind enough, ambitious in her way. But about the timing. Marcus had been job hopping for 3 years, never staying anywhere longer than 6 months. "I'm looking for the right fit," he would tell me. "I don't want to settle." But settling and committing are different things, I wanted to say. I didn't. I held my tongue because I remembered being young, remembered thinking I had all the time in the world to figure things out. His mother, Sarah, would have known what to say. She always did. Sarah had died of cancer when Marcus was 18, just weeks before his high school graduation. I watched my son deliver his valedictorian speech with tears streaming down his face, talking about resilience and hope, and I wondered how he was holding it together when I was barely functioning. The answer, I learned later, was that he wasn't. He was just better at hiding it. The grief changed him in ways I didn't fully understand until years later. He became risk-averse, afraid of losing anything else. He held on to relationships too long, stayed in situations that weren't serving him, avoided confrontation at all costs. When I tried to talk to him about it, suggest therapy or counseling, he'd smile and say he was fine. "I've got it handled, Dad. Don't worry about me." But I did worry. I worried when he chose a college close to home instead of the prestigious engineering program that had accepted him across the country. I worried when he changed his major 3 times. I worried when he graduated with a degree in business administration and no clear plan for what came next. And then Emily entered the picture, and for a while, I stopped worrying. She seemed to give him direction, purpose. They met at a networking event, one of those young professionals mixers where everyone pretended to be more successful than they were. Emily was working as an assistant at a marketing firm, but she talked about starting her own consultancy someday. Marcus was between jobs, but he talked about his upcoming opportunities. They fed each other's dreams without demanding any of the work required to achieve them. At first, I thought it was sweet. Young love, mutual support, building a future together. It took me 2 years to realize they were building castles in the air with my money as the foundation. But something had shifted 6 months ago, when Emily's parents returned from their winter home in Arizona. The Castellanos were old money, or at least they pretended to be. In reality, they had leveraged themselves into a lifestyle they could barely maintain, all appearance and no substance. They drove leased luxury cars, lived in a house with a mortgage that would outlive them, and judged everyone by the cost of their watch. I wore a Timex. I drove a 7-year-old Honda. I had paid off my house 15 years ago and lived comfortably on my pension and investments. To them, I was an embarrassment. The first family dinner after their return, Margaret Castellano had looked at my car in the driveway and asked, "Is that the gardener's vehicle?" When I explained it was mine, she had actually laughed. How charmingly practical. Her husband, Ricardo, was worse. He spoke to me like I was the help, asking intrusive questions about my finances, my background, my prospects. When I mentioned I had retired early from civil engineering, he snorted. "Oh, so you were in construction? Blue-collar work?" I had built bridges, designed water systems for 3 counties, managed projects worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But to Ricardo, I was just a man who worked with his hands. "Actually," I said, keeping my voice even, "I was a chief engineer. I designed infrastructure projects, the water treatment facility that serves this entire region. That was my team's work." Ricardo waved a dismissive hand. "Still, it's not quite the same as what I did. Investment banking requires a certain level of sophistication." "What bank were you with?" I asked, genuinely curious. His jaw tightened. "I was an independent consultant, high net worth portfolio management." Translation: He managed rich people's money until the market crashed, and they realized he didn't know what he was doing. I'd looked into Ricardo Castellano before the wedding. His consulting firm had dissolved in 2009, buried under a pile of bad investments and angry clients. He'd been living off his wife's family money ever since, but I didn't say any of that. Marcus was sitting there, watching the exchange with anxious eyes. Emily was gripping her wine glass so hard I thought it might shatter. This was supposed to be a celebration, Marcus and Emily's first wedding anniversary. I wasn't going to ruin it by exposing her father's lies. "Fascinating," I said instead, and changed the subject. But the damage was done. Margaret and Ricardo had taken my measure and found me wanting, and worse, I could see in Marcus's eyes that he was starting to believe them. Marcus said nothing. My son, whom I had raised to stand up for himself and others, sat silent, while his father-in-law diminished everything I had accomplished. Emily squeezed his hand under the table. A warning, a reassurance? I couldn't tell anymore. The visits became more frequent. Margaret and Ricardo appeared at Marcus and Emily's apartment every weekend, filling their heads with poison. I would stop by with groceries. Emily had mentioned they were tight on cash that week, and find the 4 of them drinking wine I knew cost more than their electricity bill. "Dad," Marcus would say, too loudly, too cheerfully, "you didn't have to do that." "I was at the store anyway," I would reply, setting the bags on the counter. Margaret would watch me with cold eyes. "How generous. Marcus, you really should be more independent. A man your age shouldn't rely on his father's charity." The irony was lost on her. Marcus relied on my charity for everything. But I bit my tongue. I had learned long ago that some battles weren't worth fighting in the moment. The shift happened gradually, so slowly I almost didn't notice. Marcus started making excuses not to meet for our weekly dinners. "Emily's parents are in town, Dad. Maybe next week?" Then next week would come with another excuse. Emily needed him. They had plans. He wasn't feeling well. When we did manage to meet, the conversations felt stilted, rehearsed. Marcus would talk about networking opportunities and business strategies, using language that sounded borrowed, artificial. He started dropping hints about my lifestyle choices. "You know, Dad, you could really do better than that, Honda. Image matters in business." "I'm retired, Marcus. I don't have a business image to maintain." "Still, people judge you by what you drive. The Castellanos have a great lease deal on a BMW. I could introduce you to their guy." "I'm happy with my car." He'd frown, this look of disappointment crossing his face that reminded me uncomfortably of Margaret's expressions. "You're so stubborn about these things." I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and shake him. When did I become the embarrassment? When did my frugality, my practical choices, my paid-off house, and comfortable retirement become something to be ashamed of? But I stayed quiet because I hoped it was just a phase, something he'd grow out of once the Castellanos' novelty wore off. I should have confronted it earlier. I should have drawn boundaries, should have insisted on respect, should have demanded he stand up for himself and for me. But I was caught in that terrible parental trap, wanting my son to make his own choices while desperately wishing he'd make better ones. The phone calls asking for money became more frequent. "Dad, the car needs repairs." "Dad, Emily's business expenses are higher than expected this month." "Dad, we're a little short on rent." Each time I transferred the money without complaint. Each time I told myself I was helping him get established, giving him the foundation he needed to build his life. What I was really doing was enabling him to avoid growing up. Then came last Tuesday. I was having lunch with my brother when my credit card declined. I tried another, declined, I excused myself, and called the bank from the parking lot. "Mr. Patterson, it appears your cards have been blocked by an authorized user on your account," the representative said carefully. "Which authorized user?" "Marcus Patterson. He called this morning and requested all cards be frozen due to suspected fraud." My chest tightened. There is no fraud. I understand, sir. However, the authorized user has the right to remove him. Remove him from all my accounts immediately. That will take 24 to 48 hours to process. I hung up and sat in my car, watching people walk in and out of the restaurant. Families, couples, a father with his daughter, maybe 8 years old, holding his hand as they crossed the parking lot. I had held Marcus's hand like that once. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Did you see what Marcus posted? I didn't respond, but I checked social media, something I rarely did. There it was. A photo of Marcus and Emily at the Castellanos' house, everyone raising glasses. The caption made my blood run cold. Finally taught my father he can't control me with money. Blocked all his cards today. Now he'll understand what it means to ask for help, instead of assuming it's owed. Boundaries, Schatzschauch, growing up, and independence. 247 likes. Comments rolling in. Good for you. Parents need to learn respect. Your father should be proud you're standing up for yourself. Emily's comment. So proud of you, baby. This is what partnership looks like. Margaret's. Welcome to adulthood, Marcus. Your father will thank you eventually. I sat in that parking lot for an hour, watching the sun move across the sky. Then I made several phone calls. The first was to my bank to freeze every account with his name on it. Joint accounts, co-signed accounts, every financial connection between us. The second call was to my lawyer. I need to know what happens if I remove myself from a lease I'm co-signed on. Are you the primary signer? Yes? Then you can terminate with proper notice, 30 days in your county. And if I pay a penalty for early termination? Then it's immediate. The third call was to Marcus and Emily's landlord, a woman I had met exactly once when signing the lease. Mrs. Chen, this is David Patterson. I need to discuss ending the lease on Unit 402. Is there a problem with the apartment? No, the apartment is fine. I'm terminating my financial obligation to it. There was a pause. You're the only one on the lease, Mr. Patterson. The young couple, they're just listed as occupants. I understand. I'll pay the early termination fee. How soon can this take effect? I'll need you to come in and sign paperwork, but tomorrow morning, the penalty is 2 months' rent. I'll bring a check. The fourth call was to the utility companies. Gas, electric, water, internet, all in my name, all canceled, effective end of business the following day. The fifth call was to the insurance company. Marcus's car insurance, health insurance, all the policies I had been paying for years. Canceled. The sixth call was to my financial advisor. I need you to stop all automatic transfers to Marcus Patterson effective immediately. Are you sure, David? You've been supporting him for... I'm certain. The seventh call was the hardest. I called Marcus's phone. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Marcus, this is your father. You wanted to learn about boundaries and independence. Consider this lesson 1. Every financial connection between us has been severed. The apartment lease I co-signed is terminated as of tomorrow. The utilities are shut off. The insurance is canceled. The monthly transfers you've received for 4 years have stopped. You wanted to control my cards? Now you can control your own life. Good luck. I hung up and sat in my car for another 20 minutes, shaking. Not with anger, with grief. The next day, I went to the apartment before Marcus got home from wherever he spent his days. Emily was there, working on her laptop in the living room. She looked up when I knocked. David, I didn't know you were coming by. I need to collect some items. Her smile faltered. What items? The furniture I bought, the television, the kitchen supplies, everything I purchased for this apartment. I don't understand. You will, soon. I started loading my truck. The couch, the dining table, the chairs, the bed frame, the dresser. Emily watched, her face moving from confusion to alarm to panic. David, what is this? What's happening? Ask your husband. Marcus is at my parents' house. He said you were having some kind of breakdown, that he had to protect his finances from you. I paused, a lamp in my hands. Is that what he told you? He said you were being irrational, that you'd been making concerning purchases, that he was worried about your mental state. I laughed, a bitter sound even to my own ears. Emily, I haven't made a concerning purchase in my life. I've been making every purchase for your life for 4 years. And as of yesterday, that stopped. What do you mean stopped? The lease is terminated. You have until tomorrow evening to vacate. The utilities are shut off. The insurance is canceled. The money stops flowing, all of it. The color drained from her face. You can't do that. I already did. But where will we go? That's no longer my concern. Your husband decided to teach me about boundaries. Consider the lesson delivered. I finished loading the truck and left. My phone started ringing around 6 o'clock. Marcus. I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Voicemail, again. 17 times in 2 hours. Finally, at 7:45, I answered. Dad, please, something's wrong. The landlord called. She says we have to be out tomorrow. The power is off. My car got towed because the insurance lapsed. Emily's phone doesn't work. Dad, what's happening? You blocked my cards, Marcus. That was just... Dad, the Castellanos said it would be good for you to learn some humility. They said you were too controlling. I thought if you had to ask me for help, you'd understand how it feels to need someone. So you humiliated me publicly. You blocked my access to my own money. You made me look like a fool in front of everyone. I'm sorry. I didn't think... No, you didn't think. You didn't think about the 4 years I've paid for every single aspect of your life. You didn't think about the sacrifices I made to give you opportunities I never had. You didn't think about loyalty or respect or gratitude. You thought about impressing your in-laws. Dad, please. Emily is crying. We don't have anywhere to go. Her parents won't help. They said this is a learning experience. Then I suppose you're learning. You're my father. You can't just abandon me. Something in my chest cracked. I'm not abandoning you, Marcus. I'm releasing you. You wanted independence. You wanted to prove you don't need me, so prove it. I do need you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please, we'll apologize to everyone. We'll take the post down. Whatever you want. What I want is for my son to stand on his own 2 feet. What I want is for you to understand that respect isn't something you give when it's convenient. What I want is for you to be the man I raised, not the puppet your in-laws created. I could hear Emily shouting in the background, her voice shrill with panic. Marcus was begging now, his words tumbling over each other. I listened to my son cry for 3 minutes before I spoke again. Marcus, I love you. I have always loved you. But love doesn't mean enabling your worst impulses. Your in-laws poisoned you against me because I don't fit their image of success. You let them. You chose their approval over your own father. I'll fix it. I'll tell them they were wrong. It's too late for that. The damage is done. You made your choice very publicly. Now you live with the consequences. Dad, please? When you're ready to have an actual conversation, when you're ready to take responsibility for your actions and your life, call me. Until then, you're on your own. I hung up. The phone rang again immediately. I turned it off. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Marcus as a boy. 7 years old, showing me the model bridge he'd built from popsicle sticks. 12, asking me to teach him to drive even though he was too young. 16, crying in my arms when his mother died. 22, graduating college with honors, telling everyone that his father was his hero. Where had that boy gone? At 3 a.m, my brother called my landline. David, Marcus is here. He and Emily showed up an hour ago with suitcases. They're sleeping in the guest room. Did you invite them? They didn't ask, just showed up crying and explaining what happened. David, what the hell is going on? I told him everything, the years of support, the in-laws, the blocked cards, the social media post. My response. There was a long silence. Then, Jesus, David, that's harsh. Is it? I gave him everything. He threw it back in my face for approval from people who don't even like him. He's your son. And he's a grown man who needs to learn that actions have consequences. You want to know what hurts most? Not the blocked cards, not even the public humiliation. It's that he didn't defend me. Not once in 6 months did he stand up to those people when they insulted me. So what now? Now he learns what it means to stand on his own. And if he can't? Then I failed him a long time ago by making things too easy. My brother sighed. You can stay with me for a week. After that, I'm telling them to figure it out. Thank you. Don't thank me. I think you're both being stubborn idiots, but you're my brother. 3 days passed. I focused on work, on my routines, on anything but the growing knot in my stomach. My friends knew something was wrong, but didn't press. My phone stayed off. On the 4th day, I turned it back on. 63 messages, most from Marcus, a few from Emily, 3 from the Castellanos. I read the Castellanos' messages first. Margaret. David, your behavior is absolutely unacceptable. You've traumatized your son and his wife over a simple misunderstanding. We demand you restore all financial support immediately and apologize publicly. Ricardo. This is elder abuse, David. We're consulting with our attorney about your harassment of our daughter. Margaret again. We've taken Marcus and Emily in temporarily, but this is your responsibility. Act like a father. I deleted all 3 without responding. Emily's messages were panicked. David, please, we've lost everything. My business is ruined. Our credit is destroyed. Please help us. I'll do anything. Marcus's messages evolved over the 3 days. The first dozen were apologies mixed with desperation. Then came anger. You're doing this to punish me. You're being petty and cruel. Mom would be ashamed of you. That one stung. My wife had been gone for 14 years, and Marcus knew exactly how to weaponize her memory. Then the tone shifted again. The most recent message, sent just an hour ago. Dad, I got a job. It's just warehouse work, but it's something. Emily's parents kicked us out. We're staying at a motel. I understand if you don't want to talk to me. I just wanted you to know I'm trying. I sat in my kitchen, staring at that message for 20 minutes. Then I got in my car. The motel was on the east side of town, the kind of place that rented by the week and didn't ask questions. I found their room on the second floor, the door slightly warped from years of use. I knocked. Emily answered. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes widened when she saw me. David, is Marcus here? She nodded and stepped aside. The room was small, cramped, with 2 double beds and a bathroom visible through a half-open door. Marcus sat on the far bed, still in work clothes, a blue uniform shirt with his name embroidered on the chest, cargo pants stained with dirt and what looked like grease. He had dirt under his fingernails and exhaustion written across his face. His hair needed cutting. He looked like he'd lost 10 pounds. He also looked more real than I'd seen him in years. Dad. I stepped inside. Emily closed the door and stood against it, like she might need to escape. You got a job, I said. Warehouse work. $10 an hour. It's not much, but it's honest work. Marcus nodded, not meeting my eyes. I load trucks, unload deliveries, organize inventory. I work the 6 a.m. shift, get off at 3. The manager says if I stick with it for 6 months, I might get promoted to foreman. That's $11.50 an hour. I sat down on the other bed. The mattress creaked under my weight. The room smelled faintly of mildew and the cleaning solution motels use to mask it. A small television sat on the dresser, probably showing 10 channels at most. Their suitcases were stacked in the corner, still half unpacked. How long have you been here? I asked. 5 days, Emily said quietly. The Castellanos let us stay for 2 nights. Then they said we needed to learn to stand on our own feet. Your parents' exact words were different, Marcus said bitterly. My dad's exact words were that he didn't raise Emily to be married to warehouse trash. He said that? Right before he told us to get out. Said we could come back when I had a real career and could provide appropriately for his daughter. Marcus finally looked at me, and I saw something broken in his eyes. They didn't care that we had nowhere to go. Mom offered to let us stay if I agreed to cut contact with you entirely. Said you were the source of all our problems. And you refused. Of course I refused. His voice cracked. Dad, I know I've been an idiot. I know I treated you terribly. But I'm not going to pretend you don't exist just to please them. They're not worth that. What made you realize? I asked quietly. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, that first night at their house, after everything fell apart. Mom sat me down and laid out this whole plan. She said you were clearly senile, that your decision to cut us off proved you were mentally incompetent. She wanted me to pursue guardianship, get control of your assets, have you declared unfit to manage your own affairs. I felt something cold settle in my chest. She wanted you to have me committed. Not committed exactly, just controlled. She had this lawyer friend who specializes in elder care issues. She said with the right documentation, we could make sure you couldn't hurt yourself or your family anymore, which really meant she wanted access to your money. Did you consider it? Marcus looked horrified. No, Dad, no. That's when I realized how insane this had all become. You're 63 years old, you're completely sharp, you just made the most calculated financial decision I've ever seen you make, and they wanted to have you declared incompetent because you stopped paying our bills. It was so transparently about the money. He stood up, started pacing the small space between the beds, and I realized that's all it had ever been. They didn't actually care about me or Emily. They cared about the image we projected, the lifestyle they could enjoy through us, the status we gave them. The second that was gone, so was their support. What did you say to them? I told them they were insane, that you were the sanest person I knew, that if anyone needed a competency hearing, it was my father-in-law for thinking this was okay. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Dad threw his whiskey glass at the wall, actual temper tantrum like a toddler, then he told us to get out. Emily had been quiet through all this, but now she spoke. I defended you too, David. I know I haven't been good to you. I let my parents poison me against you. But hearing my mother plot to have you declared mentally incompetent, listening to her talk about you like you were just an obstacle to overcome, it was disgusting. My father called me ungrateful. My mother said I was throwing away my future. They haven't spoken to me since. I'm sorry you lost them, I said. I'm not, she replied firmly. I didn't lose anything real. I just stopped pretending fake things were valuable. Marcus nodded, not meeting my eyes. The Castellanos said I was throwing my life away, that I was better than manual labor, so they kicked us out. And now? Now I understand that they never cared about me. They cared about the image of success. When I couldn't provide that anymore, I became disposable. He looked up at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. Like I made you feel. I sat down on the other bed. The mattress creaked under my weight. Marcus, I need you to understand something. I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it because you needed to understand the value of what you had. For 4 years, I gave you everything, and you took it for granted. Worse, you let other people convince you that my generosity was control. I know that now. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Dad, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for blocking your cards. I'm sorry for the post. I'm sorry for not defending you. I'm sorry for being so weak that I let them turn me against you. Why did you do it? Because I wanted them to respect me. Emily's parents, they have this way of making you feel small. Every conversation was about money, status, connections. They kept saying you were holding me back, that I'd never be successful with you enabling my mediocrity. I thought if I stood up to you, they'd finally see me as an equal. And did they? He laughed bitterly. No. The second things fell apart. They called me a disappointment and threw us out. Turns out their respect was as conditional as everything else about them. I watched my son struggle with these revelations, saw him wrestling with shame and anger and grief. He had lost so much, his illusions, his false friends, his comfortable existence. But he had also gained something, clarity. For the first time in years, Marcus was seeing the world as it actually was, not as he wished it to be. Do you remember, I said quietly, when you were 12 and you wanted to try out for the soccer team? He looked confused by the change in subject. Yeah, I didn't make it. You didn't make it because you didn't train. You showed up to tryouts having never practiced, expecting your enthusiasm to be enough. And when the coach cut you, you were devastated. Do you remember what I told you? You said talent without effort is just wasted potential. And then you spent the entire year practicing. Every day after school, you were out in the yard with that ball, working on your skills. You made me help you run drills. You watched videos, you studied plays, you pushed yourself harder than I'd ever seen you push. And the next year? I made the team, Marcus said softly. I made starting lineup. You earned it. Not because you were naturally gifted. Half those other kids were more talented than you. But you earned it through work, through discipline, through refusing to give up. That Marcus, the one who fell down and got back up, who set a goal and achieved it through sheer determination, where did he go? Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then, he died when Mom did. The words hung in the air between us. Emily made a small sound, and I realized she was crying. I think part of me did die with her, Marcus continued, his voice breaking. She was the one who always believed I could do anything. When she got sick, when I watched her fade away, all that confidence just evaporated. I stopped believing in myself. And instead of doing the work to rebuild that belief, I just let you carry me. It was easier, safer. Your mother's death was the worst thing that ever happened to both of us, I said. But Marcus, she wouldn't want you to use it as an excuse to stop living. She'd want you to honor her by being the man she raised you to be. I know that now. It just took losing everything to remember who I was supposed to be. I reached into my pocket and pulled out an envelope. This is a check for first and last month's rent on a small apartment. Not a nice one. A real, affordable apartment in a neighborhood where people work hard and live within their means. Marcus stared at the envelope. Dad, I can't. Yes, you can. Because this is the last time I'm giving you money without conditions. You take this, you get an apartment, and then you support yourselves. No more rent payments from me. No more utilities. No more insurance. You earn it, you keep it, you manage it. Can you do that? Yes. His voice was firm. Yes, I can do that. And Emily, can you do that? She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes. Thank you, David. Thank you for not giving up on us. I stood up. I'm your father, Marcus. I will never give up on you, but I also won't enable you to be less than you're capable of being. You understand the difference now? I do. I handed him the envelope. Then I pulled him into a hug, feeling him shake against me as he cried. Emily joined us, and for a moment, we were just a broken family trying to put itself back together. When I pulled away, I looked Marcus in the eye. Your mother would be proud of you for getting that job. She always said the measure of a person wasn't where they started, but whether they kept getting back up. I miss her. So do I. Every day. I wish I could tell her I'm sorry. For wasting so much time? For being afraid? She knows, son, and she forgives you. Now you need to forgive yourself. I left them in that motel room and drove home through the evening traffic. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Patterson? This is Margaret Castellano. Her voice was ice. I wanted to inform you that we're pursuing legal action against you for emotional distress caused to our daughter and son-in-law. You do that, Margaret. You think you can just destroy a young couple's life and face no consequences? I think I can stop paying for a lifestyle they didn't earn and couldn't maintain. As for your lawsuit, my lawyer will be very interested in the voice messages you sent me over the past 6 months, the ones where you discussed manipulating Marcus against me. I'm sure those will make compelling evidence. There was silence. Then, you recorded us? I saved my voicemails. Habit from my engineering days. Documentation is important. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Sue me, and I'll make sure every word you said about me, about my son, about your own plan to isolate him from his father becomes part of the public record. Is that really the battle you want to fight? She hung up. I never heard from the Castellanos again. Over the next 3 months, I watched Marcus transform. He worked 50-hour weeks at the warehouse, coming home exhausted but proud. Emily got a job at a marketing firm, entry-level but real. They moved into a small apartment in a working-class neighborhood. No amenities, no luxury, just a clean, safe place they paid for themselves. I visited once a month. Marcus would cook dinner, simple meals that fit their budget. We'd talk about his work, his plans, his dreams. The difference was that now his dreams had foundations in reality. The first time I visited their new apartment, I noticed the changes immediately. The furniture was mostly secondhand, purchased from thrift stores and yard sales. The television was small, probably pulled from someone's garage, but everything was clean, organized, cared for. Marcus had hung pictures on the walls, photos of him and Emily, a picture of his mother, even an old photo of the two of us from his college graduation. I found that one when we were packing up to leave the old place, he said, noticing me looking at it. I'd forgotten I even had it. In the photo, Marcus was wearing his cap and gown, diploma in hand, grinning at the camera. I had my arm around his shoulders, pride written all over my face. We looked happy. We had been happy. Your mother took that picture, I said. She was so proud of you that day. I was proud of me too, Marcus said quietly. I wish I'd held on to that feeling longer. Emily called us to dinner. Spaghetti with meat sauce, garlic bread, a simple salad. Nothing fancy, but she'd clearly put effort into it. The table was set properly, with cloth napkins she'd probably bought on sale. It reminded me of the dinners Sarah used to make back when we were young and just starting out. This is really nice, I said. Thank you for having me. Thank you for coming, Emily replied. I know it means a lot to Marcus. It means a lot to me, too. We ate and talked about normal things. Marcus told me about his coworkers, about the systems he was learning at the warehouse, about how he was studying inventory management in his spare time. Emily talked about her new boss, about the campaigns she was helping with, about the client she'd been allowed to present to for the first time. They were living real lives, doing real work, building something genuine, and they were doing it together, not as two people hiding from reality, but as partners facing it head-on. Dad, can I ask you something? Marcus said over dessert, store-bought cookies that Emily had arranged on a plate. Of course. Did you know I'd figure it out? When you cut everything off, did you believe I'd actually get my act together? I thought about my answer carefully. I hoped you would. I believed you were capable of it. But I also knew there was a risk that you'd spiral, that you'd blame me forever, that you'd never speak to me again. It was the hardest gamble I've ever taken. What if I hadn't figured it out? Then I would have intervened differently. I wouldn't have let you become homeless or starve, but I needed you to feel the consequences, to understand what your choices meant. I needed you to stop sleepwalking through your life. I'm glad you did it, he said. I hate that you had to. I hate that I put you in that position. But I'm glad. Marcus got a promotion after 3 months. Not a big one, from general worker to inventory clerk, but it came with a raise and regular hours. He started taking online classes in logistics and supply chain management. Emily got promoted too, from assistant to associate. They started saving money, actual money, in a real savings account. I watched them build their life piece by piece, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years: genuine pride in my son. One day, about 5 months after everything had fallen apart, Marcus called me with an unusual request. "Dad, I need your help with something, but not money. Can you come over on Saturday?" When I arrived, I found Marcus and Emily standing in their parking lot next to a beat-up Honda Civic. The paint was faded, there was a dent in the passenger door, and the bumper was held on with zip ties. "What's this?" I asked. "My new car," Marcus said, grinning. "Or it will be, once I get it running. The guy at work was selling it for $500. I've been watching YouTube videos about basic car repair. I was hoping you might teach me some stuff." My father had taught me about cars. I had tried to teach Marcus when he was younger, but he'd never been interested. Too messy, too complicated, too much work. Now here he was, asking to learn. We spent the afternoon under the hood of that old Civic. I showed him how to check the oil, how to identify different engine components, how to diagnose problems by sound and smell. His hands got dirty. He scraped his knuckles on a stubborn bolt. He got frustrated when something didn't work right the first time, and he kept going. "This is actually kind of fun," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead and leaving a streak of grease across his face. "Your grandfather would have liked seeing this," I told him. "He always said there was something honest about working with your hands, about taking something broken and making it whole." I think I'm starting to understand that. We got the car running that day. It wasn't pretty, and it wouldn't win any races, but it was his. He had bought it with his own money, repaired it with his own hands, and when he turned that key and heard the engine catch, the look on his face was worth everything I'd gone through. "I did it," he said, almost disbelieving. "I actually did it." "You did." "Dad, I think this is the first thing I've actually accomplished on my own in years. Really on my own. No one helping me, no one doing the work for me, no one bailing me out, just me figuring it out and doing it. How does it feel?" He was quiet for a moment, listening to the engine rumble. Then, "It feels real." One evening, 6 months after everything fell apart, Marcus asked me to stay after dinner. Emily excused herself to the bedroom. "Dad, I need to tell you something." "I'm listening." "I've been saving money. Not much, but enough. I want to pay you back for all those years you supported us." "Marcus, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. Not because you're demanding it. Because I need to. I need to know I can square things with you." He handed me an envelope. I opened it. A check for $3,000. "This is everything I've saved in 6 months," he said. "I know it doesn't cover what you spent on us, not even close, but it's a start." I looked at the check, then at my son. I saw the pride in his eyes, the dignity in his posture. This wasn't about the money. This was about him reclaiming his self-respect. "I'll take this on one condition," I said. "What?" "You promise me that you'll never let anyone make you feel less than you are again. Not in-laws, not friends, not co-workers, not anyone. You're worth more than their approval. You always were." "I promise." I folded the check and put it in my pocket. Then I pulled out my own envelope. "This is for you." "Dad, what?" "It's the check I gave you for the apartment. I never cashed it. I wanted to see if you'd actually follow through on your word. You did. This money is yours. Put it toward a car, an emergency fund, whatever you need. You earned it." Marcus stared at the envelope, then at me. "Why?" "Because the lesson was never about the money, son. It was about understanding your own worth. You could have taken my support forever and never grown. Or you could fall, stand back up, and discover what you're really made of. You chose the second path. That's worth more than any amount I could give you." We talked until midnight that night. About his mother, about regrets, about the future. When I left, Marcus walked me to my car. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "You didn't lose control that day. You knew exactly what you were doing." "I did." "You saved my life." "No, Marcus. I just reminded you how to save yourself." I drove home through empty streets, feeling lighter than I had in years. My son had learned the hardest lesson a parent can teach, that love sometimes means letting someone fall, trusting they'll find the strength to rise again. But there was more to the story, more that unfolded over the following months. Marcus didn't just survive, he thrived. He got promoted to shift supervisor at the warehouse. Emily's marketing firm made her a junior account executive. They moved to a better apartment, one they could afford on their own merit. And somewhere along the way, they started talking to me not as a son to a father, but as an adult to an adult. Marcus would call and ask for advice, not money. He'd share his struggles, but also his solutions. He'd tell me about problems at work and how he'd handled them, mistakes he'd made, and what he'd learned from them. One Sunday, about 8 months after that day in the parking lot, Marcus invited me to brunch. Not dinner at their apartment, but actual brunch at a cafe downtown. My treat, he insisted when I reached for my wallet. Over eggs and coffee, he told me something I'd been waiting years to hear. Dad, I've been thinking a lot about Mom lately, about what she'd think of all this. And I think she'd be proud, not of how I acted before, but of how I chose to change. She always used to say that mistakes don't define you, how you respond to them does. She did say that. I was so lost after she died. And instead of processing that grief, instead of dealing with it, I just let you carry me. I let you be both parents, both providers, both everything. That wasn't fair to you. You were grieving, Marcus. For 14 years? No. At some point, grief became an excuse. At some point, I was just hiding from life because life was hard and scary, and you made it so easy not to face that. I enabled you, I admitted. I should have pushed back sooner. I should have forced you to stand on your own. I was trying to make up for losing your mother by giving you everything else. That was my mistake, too. Maybe we both needed to learn something. Maybe we did. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the Sunday morning crowd filter through the cafe. Young families, elderly couples, groups of friends, people living their lives, facing their challenges, building their futures. Dad, I need to tell you something else. Okay. Emily's pregnant. I felt my heart skip. Marcus, don't worry. We're ready. We've been saving money, we both have stable jobs, we have insurance, we even started looking at bigger apartments. We're doing this the right way. Congratulations, I said, and meant it. You're going to be a father. I'm terrified. Good. That means you're taking it seriously. Will you? He hesitated. Will you help? Not financially, just be there? Teach me what you taught me? Help me not screw this up the way I've screwed up so much else? Of course I will, but Marcus, you haven't screwed everything up. You stumbled, you fell, but you got back up. That's what matters. That's what you'll teach your child. I want to name him David. If it's a boy, after you, and if it's a girl, Sarah, after Mom. Emily agreed. We thought maybe it was time to honor the people who actually matter. I had to look away for a moment, blinking back tears. Your mother would love that. What do you think she'd say if she could see me now? I thought about Sarah, about her fierce love and her gentle wisdom, about how she'd always believed in Marcus even when he didn't believe in himself, about how she'd known, even as she was dying, that her biggest fear was leaving him before he was ready. She'd say, "It's about damn time you figured it out." I smiled. And then she'd hug you and tell you how proud she is. Marcus laughed, wiping at his own eyes. Yeah, that sounds like Mom. A year after that, they bought their first house. Small, modest, with a mortgage they actually understood. Marcus called me the day they closed. Dad, we did it. We actually did it. I never doubted you would. Yes, you did. That's why you did what you did. He was right. I had doubted, but I'd also hoped. And hope, paired with tough love, had been enough. The house was a starter home in a working-class neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a small backyard with a rusted swing set left by the previous owners. The roof needed some work, the kitchen was outdated, and the carpet upstairs was stained. But it was theirs. When I walked through it for the first time, Marcus pointed out everything they planned to fix, everything they wanted to improve. We're going to do most of the work ourselves, he said. Save money and learn some skills. Maybe you could teach me? I'd love to. We stood in the empty living room, sunlight streaming through windows that needed new screens. This house was nothing like the apartment I had paid for, with its modern amenities and convenient location. This house required work, commitment, vision. This house required them to become something more than they had been. Mom would have loved this place, Marcus said quietly. She always said a home wasn't about perfection. It was about the life you built inside it. She was right. I wish she could have met Emily, really met her, not the version of Emily that existed before, the real one. She would have liked her, the real one. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, Dad, I know I've said this before, but I need to say it again. Thank you. For not giving up on me, for loving me enough to let me fail, for trusting that I could figure it out even when I didn't trust myself. You're my son. That's what fathers do. No, he said firmly. That's what good fathers do. The Castellanos would have just kept enabling Emily forever, or they would have cut her off completely and never looked back. You found the middle path, the hard path, the path that required you to hurt me in order to save me. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. I believe you, but it was also the right thing. We had dinner at their house that weekend. As I sat at their table, eating food they'd bought with money they'd earned in a home they'd purchased themselves, I thought about that moment in the parking lot, the moment I decided to let everything fall. It had been the hardest decision of my life, but it had also been the right one, because respect isn't given, it's earned, and independence isn't something you declare on social media, it's something you build, one paycheck at a time, one difficult decision after another, one moment of dignity reclaimed. Marcus had learned that lesson, and in teaching it to him, I'd learned something too. Sometimes the greatest gift a father can give his son isn't support. It's the courage to withdraw it, trusting that the foundation you built together will hold. It did, and we were both stronger for it. The call came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in spring. I fumbled for my phone, heart already racing because nothing good happens at 2 a.m. "Dad?" Marcus's voice was shaking, but not with fear, with excitement. "It's time. Emily's in labor. We're at the hospital." I was dressed and in my car within 5 minutes, driving through empty streets toward the hospital on the other side of town. The city looked different at that hour. Quieter, softer, full of possibility. I thought about the last time I'd made this drive 32 years ago, when Sarah was in labor with Marcus. I'd been terrified then, convinced I was going to fail at fatherhood before I even started. Maybe every parent feels that way. The hospital waiting room smelled like antiseptic and bad coffee. Marcus was pacing, still in the warehouse uniform he'd been wearing when Emily's water broke. He looked exactly like I must have looked all those years ago, young, scared, desperately hoping he was ready for what came next. "How is she?" I asked. "Good. Strong. She's amazing, Dad. The nurses said everything's progressing normally." He ran a hand through his hair. "I can't believe this is really happening." "You're going to be a father." I keep thinking about all the things I need to teach him, or her, all the things I need to get right. What if I mess up? What if I'm not good enough? I put my hand on his shoulder. "You'll mess up. Every parent does. The question isn't whether you'll make mistakes, it's whether you'll learn from them, whether you'll keep trying, whether you'll love your child enough to let them struggle and grow and become their own person. Like you did with me. Like I tried to do with you. I made plenty of mistakes too, Marcus. I enabled you too long. I didn't see what was happening until it was almost too late. I nearly lost you because I was so afraid of losing you that I held on too tight. But you let go when it mattered." I did. And that's the hardest part of being a parent. Knowing when to hold on and when to let go. You'll figure it out. You and Emily together. A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Patterson, your wife is asking for you." Marcus looked at me, and I saw that 7-year-old boy again, the one who fell off his bike and got back up, the one who lost his mother and somehow survived, the one who fell apart and put himself back together. My son, about to become a father himself. "Go," I said. "I'll be here." He disappeared through the doors, and I sat down to wait. The hours passed slowly. I watched the sunrise through the hospital windows, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I thought about Sarah, wished desperately that she could be here for this. She would have known exactly what to say, exactly how to comfort Marcus, exactly how to welcome this new life into our family. But she wasn't here, so it was up to me to carry her memory, to honor what she'd taught us, to make sure her grandchild knew about the woman who had loved so fiercely and died too soon. At 6:47 a.m., Marcus emerged from the delivery room. His eyes were red, his face streaked with tears, and he was smiling wider than I'd seen him smile in years. "It's a boy," he said. "David Marcus Patterson. 7 pounds, 4 ounces. Perfect. Absolutely perfect." He pulled me into a hug, and I felt him shaking with joy and relief and overwhelming love. This was it. This was the moment everything changed again. The moment he stepped fully into adulthood, into responsibility, into the terrifying and beautiful job of raising a human being. "Can I see him?" "Of course. Emily wants you there." I followed him through the halls to the recovery room. Emily was propped up in bed, exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket. She looked up when we entered and smiled. "Hi, David. Want to meet your grandson?" I approached slowly, reverently. She placed the baby in my arms, and I looked down at this tiny person who shared my name. He had Marcus's nose, Emily's chin, Sarah's dark hair. He was perfect, impossibly small and perfect and full of potential. "Hello, David," I whispered. "Welcome to the family." The baby yawned, a tiny sound that made everyone laugh. Marcus came to stand beside me, looking down at his son with wonder. "I'm going to do better than I did," Marcus said quietly. I'm going to teach him to work hard, to stand on his own, to respect the people who love him, to never take anything for granted. You'll teach him exactly what he needs to know, I said, and when you make mistakes, and you will, you'll model how to fix them, how to apologize, how to grow. That's what matters. I stayed at the hospital until visiting hours ended, watching Marcus and Emily with their new son. They were naturals, even in those first uncertain hours. Marcus changed diapers without complaining. Emily nursed without complaint. They worked together, supporting each other, figuring out this new reality as a team. This was what I'd hoped for when I cut off their support. Not the struggle or the pain, but the growth that came after. The strength they'd discovered in themselves. The partnership they'd built through adversity. As I drove home that evening, I thought about the full circle we'd traveled. From that parking lot where I'd made the hardest decision of my life, through months of silence and separation, through reconciliation and rebuilding, to this moment, a new generation, a fresh start, a chance to do things right. Marcus was going to be a good father. Not because he'd never struggle or doubt or fail, but because he'd learned what it meant to fall and get back up. He'd learned the value of honest work, of earned pride, of self-respect. He'd learned that love sometimes looks like letting go. And someday, when little David was old enough to understand, Marcus would tell him the story of how his grandfather taught him the most important lesson of his life. Not through lectures or advice, but through action. Through the courage to step back and let him fall, trusting that he'd find the strength to rise. The weeks turned into months. I visited often, watching little David grow, teaching Marcus the things my father had taught me, how to comfort a crying baby, how to see the world through a child's eyes, how to find patience when you think you've run out. One evening, when little David was about 3 months old, Marcus and I sat on his back porch while Emily got the baby ready for bed inside. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the yard they were slowly transforming. Marcus had planted a small vegetable garden. Emily had hung bird feeders. It was becoming a home, not just a house. "Dad, I've been thinking about writing a letter to the Castellanos." I was surprised. Why? Not to reconcile, not to make peace, just to thank them. Thank them. For showing me what I didn't want to become, for pushing me so hard that I finally pushed back, for revealing their true selves so clearly that I couldn't ignore it anymore. If they'd been kinder, more subtle, I might have stayed trapped in that life forever. That's a generous perspective. Maybe, or maybe it's just honest. They didn't intend to help me, but they did. By being exactly who they are, they forced me to decide who I wanted to be. And I chose to be your son, not theirs. Have you heard from them? Emily got a message from her mother last month, asking to meet David, talking about family and forgiveness and wanting to be part of his life. What did you say? I said we'd think about it. But honestly, Dad, I don't think so. They haven't apologized. They haven't acknowledged what they did. They just want access to their grandson because that's what looks good, what fits their image of a perfect family. But they don't get to skip the hard parts. They don't get to treat us like garbage and then waltz back in when it's convenient. That's your choice to make. Do you think it's the right choice? I think you're protecting your family. I think you're setting boundaries. I think you're being the man your mother hoped you'd be. I paused. But I also think someday, if they ever genuinely apologize, if they ever truly change, you might consider giving them another chance. Not because they deserve it, but because forgiveness is for you, not for them. Did you forgive them for what they tried to do to you? I did. Not because they asked for it, but because carrying that anger was exhausting. They're sad people, Marcus, trapped in their own delusions about status and worth. I pity them more than I hate them. Marcus nodded slowly. Maybe I'll get there someday, but right now, I'm focused on being present for my son, teaching him what really matters, making sure he never doubts that he's loved for who he is, not for what he has or who he might impress. Inside, we could hear little David starting to fuss, hear Emily's soft voice singing a lullaby. The same lullaby Sarah used to sing to Marcus all those years ago. Emily had asked me to teach it to her, and now it was being passed down to another generation. "You know what the best part is?" Marcus said, standing up to go help his wife. "I'm not scared anymore. I was terrified for so long, of failure, of judgment, of losing everything. But now I know I can lose everything and still be okay. I can fall and get back up. The fear doesn't control me anymore." "That's the real lesson," I said. "Not that you won't fall, but that falling isn't the end." "No," he agreed. "Sometimes it's the beginning." 2 years later, I stood in Marcus's backyard, watching him push his son on the restored swing set. Little David was laughing, shouting, "Higher, Daddy, higher!" Marcus obliged, and I saw in his face the same determination he'd once had learning to ride that bike. Emily came out with lemonade, her belly round with their second child. Another boy they'd named James. "How are you feeling?" I asked. "Happy, grateful." She settled into a lawn chair. "David, I'm sorry for letting my parents poison me against you. You were doing what you thought was right. I was doing what was easy. You were doing what was right, and I hated you for it." She wiped her eyes. "You're a better parent than I knew was possible. You already are." Marcus came over with David on his shoulders. "Grandpa, did you see how high I went?" "I did. You were almost touching the clouds." "Daddy says when I'm bigger, he'll teach me to ride a bike. Did he know how when he was little?" "He did, but he had to fall down a lot first. That's how you learn." David considered this. Was he scared? Sometimes, but he kept trying anyway. That's what brave means. "I want to be brave like Daddy." Marcus lifted his son down, and we shared a moment of understanding, the lessons being passed down, the next generation learning what it meant to fall and rise. That evening, after Emily took David inside, Marcus and I sat on the porch as the sun set. "I've been promoted again," he said. "Operations manager." "Marcus, that's wonderful." 3 years ago, I couldn't hold a job. Now I'm managing 20 people, because I learned that respect is something you earn. Your mother would be proud. I think about her every day. If I could talk to her, I'd say thank you and sorry for the years I wasted. She knows. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge. "Dad," Marcus said, "I never properly thanked you for that day, for letting me fall. It saved my life. You saved your own life. I just got out of the way. You had to believe I could do it. When I didn't believe in myself, your faith was enough. That's what love looks like, the hard choices that come from caring more about someone's future than their comfort. That's exactly what it is. I promise I'll teach David and James the same way. I'll love them completely, but I won't enable them. If I have to make hard choices to wake them up, I will, because you showed me how." The door opened. "David wants to say goodnight to Grandpa." I went inside to find little David in his pajamas, clutching a stuffed bear that had once been Marcus's. He climbed into my lap, warm and sleepy. "Grandpa, will you tell me a story about Daddy when he was little?" I looked at Marcus, who nodded. So I told David about his father learning to ride a bike, about the falls and the determination to get back up. I told him about his grandmother, Sarah, who believed courage meant trying even when scared. I told him about hard work and never giving up. By the time I finished, David was half asleep. Emily carried him off to bed. Marcus walked me to my car. Same time next week? I wouldn't miss it. I drove home thinking about lessons. Had I done right? Yes. Sometimes pain was growth. Marcus had learned. Marcus replaced the post. My father taught me the hardest lesson and greatest gift. Some lessons can only be lived. Real love sometimes looks like walking away. The profound gift is faith in someone's ability to save themselves. Marcus rose to it. It was worth it. I found my son, he found himself.